to the Honey Hunt, the internet's most passionate honey program where we taste and learn and talk about the world's best honey. Today I have a honey here from St. Paul, where I'm from, in central Minnesota, St. Paul, Minneapolis area, and it's called Bear Honey. And I've got some raw honeycomb to taste and try. And you can see there is the raw honeycomb. And I've got some raw wildflower honey from Bear Honey. And so I love honey and I love honeybees, and I've always been a huge fan, and I've always eaten lots of honey, and if I travel, I love to try honey and get honey wherever I go. And so this passion of mine, I'm gonna turn into this show so that I can taste honeys from all over the world and learn more with you guys. So I've been learning a little bit about tasting honey, and from what I know so far, you want to spread it on the inside of a glass so that you can sniff it and then taste it and sniff it. So kind of like wine. I have this book called Taste of Honey by Marie Simmons, and it's more of a cookbook, but it does talk a little bit about the kinds of honey and the tasting of it in the front of the book. So it talks about the different colors that honey can be and the different monofloral tastes that it can have, as well as wildflower honey, which is just an assortment of wildflowers. We don't have a single source of honey. For that, it's just wherever the bees go that day. There's lots and lots of stuff available in the summertime. But if you've ever wondered how they get the monofloral honeys, it's because if you have an abundance of one type of tree or flower all blooming at once in one area, and that's the predominant source of nectar, then when the bees go out, they will go to that single source over and over and over again. And when they come back and they communicate to each other about where to get the nectar that day, they are communicating about a single source. And so when they go out, they tend to go one to one to one to each flower of that single source of honey. So that's how we get single source honey. And when there's tons and tons of stuff available and it's all kind of a mishmash, then we're not exactly sure. This is wildflower honey. So lots of different flowers, lots of different trees, anything that's available, they're coming back with the nectar of lots of different things, and it can be an assortment. So that will give you some idea of the taste of honey, and lots of amazing recipes in this book. And this book is on thehoneyhunt.com in our shop, and it'll be available there. And this honey that we're going to taste today will also be available there. And I've never actually had honeycomb. It's really expensive, so I've never actually indulged in it, but I am indulging with you today. So we're gonna taste that. What I've heard is that it's not as waxy as you would think. It's not like biting into a candle or anything like that. It's softer, and it's all 100% edible. So I would imagine you could spread this on toast or something like that, or just eat it like I'm gonna eat it with a spoon here today with you. And this is wildflower honey, goes on anything, very versatile. It's a very, it's a lighter color, light to medium, I would say, but some honey can be very, very dark. So some people may classify this almost like a white honey because it's so light compared to the darker honeys that are available. So that is that. So without further ado, let's spread this honey on the glasses, take some sniffs, and see what it smells like and what it tastes like. So I've heard that plastic spoons are the best because they're not going to get involved in the flavor of the honey. So eventually maybe I will switch to glass, but I just intend to wash and reuse these as much as possible for now. So let's go ahead and open the honey. And I've got a knife handy here. May need that. All right, this is open, and actually I was not able to find the Bear Honey brand of honeycomb, but I did link to the Ames Farm honeycomb. It's very similar to this, similar packaging and everything. So that's what's linked in the shop on thehoneyhunt.com if you go looking for this. But if Bear Honey wants to tell me where to send people to buy their honeycomb, more than happy to do so. So let's get the honey spread on the glass from the table honey first, or the liquid honey, and then we can let it sit there for a little bit. So this is raw honey, and by raw, it hasn't been homogenized or anything like that. That requires a certain high temperature for a certain amount of time to kill bacteria and things like that. So that's not required of honey. But even if it's going to be 100% raw, if it's in the honeycomb and you're trying to extract it, a lot of times people will warm up the honey to get it to flow out faster, and also to get it to flow into jars easier than waiting for thick honey to fall into jars. But raw honey has not been heated beyond a certain degree for a certain amount of time. So it's heated up for those reasons, just slightly, and it's not to cook it or anything. And then it's just for ease of use, and it's not cooked. It's just heated up to be able to do those things and then left on its own. So let's grab this. So right off the bat, I'm seeing that it is slightly crystallized, mostly still liquid, and honey does crystallize. Almost all honey will crystallize, and what you want to look for in a honey that's crystallizing is even crystallization. And if you prefer it to be liquid, you can always heat it gently, slowly, over quite a bit of, like a couple of hours even, and you just take this jar and set it in a shallow pan that has water in it in your oven at a very low temperature, maybe 250, for a couple of hours until it liquefies. But that crystallization is not a sign that it's gone bad. It's not a sign that it's a cheap honey. Some honeys just have more sugar than others, and so they tend to crystallize more. So as you can see, as I'm spreading this is really light, very white honey. So I'm just gonna leave that like that. I'm gonna leave this spoon out like this. We're gonna taste that in a minute. Grab this other spoon, and for the first time in my life, I'm going to eat raw honeycomb. Okay, so it is tough to dig into with my spoon. The actual comb itself feels like it has crystallization happening in it. So it's not just a plasticky feel, and it's very flaky and very thin. All right, here we go. It's a little chewy, but like a candy would be chewy, not like wax. It's slightly waxy, but mostly like a candy feeling. It tastes like honey, but it doesn't have that overly sweet. Like, it's not sweet consistently like honey. And as the honey's going out of it, then I'm left with just the wax, but it's not super waxy. So I'm gonna take another bite here. So this would be really good on toast. And the flavor of the honey itself is very light. Not much amber, like not much of that smoky honey kind of flavor, more just like light and sugary with a little bit of floweriness to it. So that's that. So that is delicious. That was wonderful. I highly recommend. I might actually just dig this out of here and take a bite into it. So that's that. Then let's go ahead and smell this honey. Ooh, this really does smell like that ambery smell up front. It smells like honey. But I mean, like, if you had other sugary sweet things or even just sugar water and you smelled it and then you smelled this, you would know it was honey because it has that smoky ambery kind of tone to it. Notes, are we talking in terms of notes like wine? All right. So yeah, so I'm smelling honey and amber, but still very light. So let's take a good taste of this. And I'm just gonna hold this in my mouth, kind of swish it around, let some air get in there too. Try to really get the flavor of it going. So it's a thinner honey, not super thick, very light, just like the comb. Flowery at the end, but again, very light. Very versatile honey. It's not overpowering in any way. It has a sort of a warm, very light butterscotchy thing at the end after the flowers hit. Yeah, it's wonderful. I really like it. And you could use it lots of different ways. And this, I would say, if you wanted to experiment with flavoring honey, this would be a good honey to add some flavoring to, because it's not going to be overpowered by a deep amber or a bitter taste. It's not super smoky, so you could add whatever flavors you wanted to, and they would come through into the honey and be kind of work together rather than kind of fight overly powering honey. So that's great. Let's smell this again. I'm smelling the same thing I tasted, just different. More honey, more of that amber, more like a butterscotch, and then the floweriness. But lots of flowers in this one. So that was lovely. So this was our first taste of honey, the very first honey hunt show, and we talked about bear honey from St. Paul, Minnesota, and we also talked about this book, Taste of Honey, The Definitive Guide to Tasting and Cooking with 40 Varietals by Marie Simmons, and this will also be in the shop on thehoneyhunt.com. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you next time.